have it. So thanks again for coming. This is a holiday everywhere except the United States. So Chris is actually on billable hours right now, and he's playing hooky, but don't tell anybody, okay?
Lunch break. It's
we won't get you into trouble, I hope. So look, the real reason that we're here, I'm going to blame. Oh, there's Chris Long. Where are you today, Chris?
Tampa Bay. In the
so
office.
We got Tampa Bay, Miami, London, Ottawa. Where are you guys, Michael, and your team there? Where are you guys today?
We're in Ottawa.
Oh, you're in Ottawa. Okay. So a bunch of Ottawa guys and other places. And anyway, there you go. So I'm Bruce Farr. I'm the one who called this meeting, but I'm not responsible for this meeting. It's all George and Brette's fault. Okay. George and Brette own a tiny house. I put that in quote marks because it's friggin' humongous. And George calls me up one day and says, hey, Bruce, can I park my tiny house somewhere on one of your properties? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. I've always liked tiny houses. I do. I like affordable housing and tiny houses. And so we did a deal, George, Brette, and I, and he parked it next to I call it my Barndominium, where I've got a bunch of workshops. And when he wheels it onto the site, you guys, I didn't know it was 55 feet long. I mean, I should have asked, right? But I didn't. And so he parked it there. And then what he did was he told me that people in Ottawa, where I am right now, are having a tough time, finding a place to park their tiny homes. Would that be fair, Michael and group there? It's not easy to do, right? And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, and I won't bore you with going into all of them, but I have an idea. And what I wanted to do today was, and again, thanks again for taking time out of your holiday and out of your workday. What I wanted to do was I wanted to share a few slides with you guys on an idea I have. And if nobody likes it, I'm not worried about it. James and I, we're both real estate brokers too. We'll sell the site, no problem at all. So if you guys hate the idea, you're not offending me in any way. James and I'll just sell the site. But I do have an idea for something I call Tiny House Town, and I wanted to run it by all of you. So Stuart is a contractor, Paul is a contractor, Matt is a real estate pro. And we've got other investors and knowledgeable people. Jake is and his wife Paula are real estate developers. So we've got a really good group here. Okay, so I'll share my screen with you. Before I do that, though, I didn't ask everybody to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. I work almost exclusively on the basis of trust. So I would ask everybody to keep the following information confidential. Is that okay with everybody? All right, because I don't want to get anybody into trouble, especially me. So I'll share my screen with you guys. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of the Ottawa Centers. This is my brand, I guess. And I'm also a real estate investment and business coach, and I'm a real estate broker along with James at Royal LePage. And what happened was clients of mine, Trevor Small and his wife Marlon Small, Marlon like the fish, own a very good site in Ottawa. It's about 28 acres and it's close to the Carp Airport. Michael, etc., do you guys know where the Carp Airport is?
Yeah, I've got a general idea.
I think you actually were located quite close to the Carp Airport.
We're not too far away from it.
Not too far away. Anyway, you know where it is. So Marlon and Trevor owned this 28-acre piece. It's very close to an interchange. It's about 8 minutes from the Canadian Tire Center. And really, it's probably not suited to anything except contractor yards. And Chris, just so you know, you can see on the screen here, we're calling it small yards in honor of the Small family. But it's kind of an interesting name anyway. And so anyway, what happened was Trevor was a good friend to me. And unfortunately, about 3 months ago, he passed away. And before he died, he asked me to help his widow, Marlon, with her future. And so what I said to her is this 28 acres is a really, in my opinion, valuable piece of property in the future, and it could be used for something like, tiny house town, small yards, long yards, what have you. and I think you should hold on to it. But Marlon is 82, and her family didn't want to see her get involved in anything other than the most simple things at her age. She's full of beans. She's in good health, but she's lost her husband of 60 some years. And so anyway, make a long story short, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they came to me and they asked me to sell it. And I didn't really want them to sell it, but anyway, there's the story. So you can see on the screen here, I'll put this over here. Here's the interchange. You can kind of see it up here. It's March Road and the Queensway, Highway 417 in Ottawa. And if you go up that away on my screen, this away on my screen, that's where the Carp Airport is. And so the 28 acres that Marlon owns, now that her husband has passed, is here. You can see my cursor moving around. It's 28 acres. There is a pipeline over here, not on their property, but next to their property. There's quite a bit of residential in behind here, and then there's some industrial development as well around it. And it's heavily wooded land. So that's the subject property, and it's zoned rural. Just to give an idea of what's around it, again, I just kind of zoomed out here. This is the subject property here, where the 28 acres here. Here's the Queensway, the Highway 417, part of the Trans-Canada Highway system. And if you go down this way, you'll be at the Canadian Tire Center. So it's 8 minutes west of Canadian Tire Center. It's about 2 minutes west of the Carp Airport. There's quite a nice development going on here called Diamond View Estates, you know, with homes that are $600,000, $900,000. So there's some beautiful homes here. I helped with this development over here. It's called Aquatopia. It's really kind of a wedding center. Then this is Country Meadow Estates, where those homes are. There's some golf if people like golf here, and I think there's another golf course over here. So it's an interesting area. I quite like it. This is a picture I took on the site. And one of my tiny house friends asked me if there's water on the site. In fact, there's 2 wells on site right now, one at 400 feet and one at 1,000. Perfectly fine water and lots of it, but you can't really drink it, okay? So you could use it for washing dishes, you could use it for flushing a toilet, you could use it for washing your car or truck, but it's probably not drinkable. I mean, it wouldn't kill you, but it has a high salt content, over 500 parts per million. You know, by comparison, seawater is about 20,000. So you'd be okay to drink it, but you wouldn't want to drink it as a steady diet. So there is water on the site. And this is an access point where Paul and Stuart and I were there not too long ago. So this was the original plan, you guys, for the site. This is just me sketching it out. So again, it's 28 acres in total. It has access to Rob Lytle's lane. So there's access over here, then there's access on March Road. And the idea was to develop a first phase, which is 3 larger sites here of a ½ acre each, and then 6 smaller sites of about 5,000 square feet each. To put 5,000 square feet in perspective, you know, that's the size of a fairly good suburban lot. You know, a typical 50-foot wide by 100-foot deep lot is plenty big enough for a tiny house, or in fact for a contractor yard where you could park some vehicles, an RV or a loader, a dozer, whatever. So the original idea was to take 3 acres and develop it into 6 5,000 square foot sites, and then 3 larger ones of about ½ an acre each. So that was kind of what I was looking at. And then I said earlier, it's all George and Brette's fault for this. So this is I call it Big Bertha. Don't tell George and Brette I call it Big Bertha, but this is what they wheeled onto the site. And you can sort of see over here on the left and over here on the right, that's the Barndominium, where I have a bunch of workshops, and they're now parked there. They're hooked up, I think, to my septic system, the water, and the electrical system as well. And I think they're enjoying it. I like having them there, plus on that. So this is the Barndominium here. I just put it in here because I thought it was kind of a cool project. This is a barn I built 25 years ago. In fact, I relocated it from another property and rebuilt it. And it's got about 10 workshops in it. Here's one of them. This is my young friend, Abed. He has his carpentry business in one of the shops. And this is a pretty typical workshop. And the reason I'm showing this is if we do a tiny house town and a contractor yards on this site, my plan would be to also add some, some workshops and some space. So you not only have a place to live, but you might have a place for your side hustle as well. So Abed does kitchens, bathrooms, and general rentals, and is very successful. He's very young. He's only 24, but very successful. This is his company, Fan and Construction, I guess. Here's another gentleman in the Barndominium. This is his workshop. He makes cigar box guitars. I didn't even know what a cigar box guitar is, but you can actually make guitars out of cigar boxes. So there's no limit to the ingenuity that people develop. And so this is what he does. He makes fabulous guitars. Here's another one of the people in the Barndominium. This is Arnaud Prati. He's from France, and he makes these beautiful e-catamarans. And we've got a bunch of others there. I won't bore you with all of it, but people are doing really amazing things. Not everybody wants to have a job, and a lot of people are starting side hustles and gigs. And then one of Michael, one of your group there, I don't remember which one, asked me if there's water. So we do have water in the Barndominium, and of course, Brett and George have hooked up to it. But this is the system, guys, that we would have to install on March Road to take the water from 500 parts per million salt to something that's as good and this is my wife, by the way, you're seeing here on the screen, to take it from the well, because the well next to the barn is very similar to the one that's on this March Road site. And so I don't want to tell you, this is a $37,000 reverse osmosis system. But the water that comes out of here is better than anything you could buy in the store. So we put the investment in because we want to have good water, because we have a number of people in the area who are using this well. So this is one of my daughters. This is Jessica, and this is Trevor's daughter, Stephanie, who was on the site. And I just want to give people an idea of the soil conditions here. It's very sandy, which is a good thing in my opinion. It's good to build on sand. I mean, it's very stable, but the water table is not very far down. And this is Stephanie just digging literally 18 inches down where we could find water. It's like you at the beach when you were a kid, you used your shovel and you put it in the pail, and few inches down you found water. So I'm here I won't give you the video. The reason I think that's important to you guys is I am a huge digger of ponds. I don't know how many I've dug, but the soil conditions, I am absolutely sure on this property are suitable to do at least a half-acre pond. So you've got underground springs that flow through the sand. Sand is a very permeable soil. And you can create these beautiful ponds. And this is the Barndominium here, and you can see the pond. I've got a 3-acre pond next to it. And here's another pond I built. This is a big one. This one is huge. It's about 22 acres. This one took me 17 years to dig. And this is my youngest son, Matthew, kayaking on the pond. It's called Dunrobin Lake. And here's another one I dug. This I dug for an indigenous person who teaches smoke lodge. You go into a smoke lodge, is that what it's called? I don't know. You go in there and you heat it up. Sweat lodge, I think. Is that what it's called, sweat lodge? And so he has his wood, and I didn't, it's private, so I don't put photos in here of his sweat lodge, but young people and not so young people go there, and he teaches them, the lore around sweat. You go into the sweat lodge, and there's a whole ceremony that goes with it, and a whole learning that goes with it. And he wanted a pond, so we had the right conditions, so I dug a pond there too. I've dug dozens of them, I don't know. So I create my own waterfront, okay? And I really like doing this. I bet you nobody on this call has ever watched this movie called Lost Horizon. Has anybody actually seen this movie, Lost Horizon? It's a Frank Capra film done in 1937. But I bet you nobody's ever seen it. I'm 70 years of age, so that's my only excuse. But the reason I put that in here is it's a wonderful story. Young people might be bored by it. First of all, despite the picture here, it's actually in black and white. It's very long, and it's very slow. And I have 5 kids, and I think their attention span is under a second. So it might be, a little bit of a torture for them, but it is a beautiful film in many ways. And it's about the desire of human beings to find nirvana, to find utopia, right? And in this case, this group of explorers finds this utopia. It's called Shangri-la. It's really worthwhile seeing. So what I'm thinking about contractor yards and tiny house town, I'm thinking of something that is actually quite beautiful, or at least hopefully it will be quite beautiful. I'll skip this one. Let's see where I go to. So I've got, Chris, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Chris Long, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, that clients of mine have bought 106 acres in the south end of Ottawa to develop something they call park yards. These, again, are bigger contractor yards. And they're having a lot of success with. There's quite a bit of demand for park yards. And you guys will understand where I'm going in a second. This is kind of a sketch of what it'll look like. These are half-acre yards as opposed to small ones like Longyards, which might be 50 by 50 or 50 by 100, so 5,000 square feet or smaller. And so they're for bigger contractors to use. And the other thing that I've been talking about for a long time, you guys, is whether you're building something that's industrial or something that's residential, you should add something I call playland. And playland just means you have games. And I have this, sense that people who, families who play together, stay together. And, I built lots of industrial buildings over my lifetime. And even in very heavy industrial sites, I add a playland because, people need a break. And in Ottawa, we have 113 days of summer. You might as well spend them outside. So maybe you have outdoor ping pong. Maybe you have outdoor bocce. Maybe you have cornhole. This is one of my daughters playing with her husband here in a backyard. I don't know if you guys play pickleball, but I'd love to have a pickleball court. It's a game I could still play at my age. I'm not going to show you what it is. I like picnic tables, but I like picnic tables with some kind of shade. And these are properties that I own where I've developed, sophisticated outdoor kitchens and areas for outdoor living. And this is just one that I built recently with my crew here. So what I'm thinking is we'd have a tiny house town with some revenue producing items, for different things. And, you'd have some fun things as well. The contractor yard business actually was started by Kyle Powell in Arizona, in Gilbert, Arizona. And what he did was, you can sort of see this is, it looks like a racetrack, and he's got contractor yards all around. Very successful. And this is kind of what it looks like. This was Chris Long, who was on the call. He was the first one to start it, I think, in Canada. Now he's got sites in Florida, I think North Carolina, who knows where else, a few other things. And what Chris did was I helped him buy this long, skinny site on Bank Street. It's under 10 acres. And this was the plan that Chris did to divide it up into contractor yards. The day that Chris and I went to see it, Chris Long and I went to see it, this is what it looked like. This is the house that was on there. This is the condition it was in. You can imagine most people would tear it down, but it's not what Chris did. He renovated it because he is a contractor and constructor. And it's now got 2 bedrooms, I think upstairs, 2 bedrooms downstairs, and a garage office here. And then here's Chris in his new office on site. This is his daughter, Lily. It's his oldest daughter. I think, Chris, you have 3 daughters now?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are pretty little though, right?
Yeah, well, Emma just turned a year.
A year. So he's got a young family. So this is Lily on the day that Longyards opened, holding up this card, and I love this. I digitized this. Good luck on your job. We hope Longyards last millions of years. And she wrote that for her dad. I thought it was quite sweet. And I hope you don't mind me saying, Chris, but I kind of twisted your arm to buy it a few years ago. I guess 2017 for $475,000. And Chris developed it beautifully. And it ended up, I think last year or this year, it appraised at 3.6 million. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it has a cash flow of about 25,000 a month from about 9.6 acres. So that's pretty cool. Now, if this group, and you'll see where I'm going in a second, if we were to actually, put in an offer for this property, which the family wants to sell, I'd rather that they didn't, but they decided to sell it. There are some risks. Maybe there isn't enough demand for tiny house parking or contractor yards. There's always the risk of cost overruns. And you always have to deal with zoning and site plan issues, which can be quite problematic. Just again, a few, I'm almost done, guys. I promise I'll let you go in a few minutes. So this is just some more shots of what's around there. So there's some quite nice homes in the area, Country Meadow Estates. You can sort of see the kind of home here. Then there's some industrial, as I mentioned earlier, in the area. This is a works depot. Then this is another residential subdivision that Phoenix is doing next to the Carp Airport called Diamond View Estates. This is the Ultramar bulk plant, which is not far away either. And then here's another works garage in the area. Then this is Aquatopia, which I mentioned I had a small hand in developing. I sold the land to the developer here who built this wedding center, which is quite successful. And not far away, there's the Shell gas station if you need to gas up your vehicle. So, Marlon called me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, with her family, with Stephanie and her son Jerry, and they wanted to sell it. And the original asking price was $1.5 million. And I said, that's probably a bit high for the condition of the site. And so they asked me to set the list price at $635,500. And that's for 28 acres. So that works out to, I don't know, what is that? 635 divided by 28, 635. Give me a second here, divided by 28. I should be able to do that in my head. That's about $22,000 or $23,000 an acre. 8 minutes away at the Canadian Tire Center, land is selling for between 1.1 and 1.2 million an acre. Mind you, it's closer into town and has a different zoning, but still 22 or 23,000 is quite low. And what I'm thinking about doing is putting a group together to buy it, including myself. And I have to, of course, I have to disclose that to everybody, including the sellers. And we'll put a first mortgage in place. And I'm going to ask, I don't know if they'll agree, but I'm going to ask Marlon and her family to finance 40% of it. So it'll be close to a no money down deal, if you guys understand what I'm getting at. Probably about 10% plus closing costs, so not very much. And if you're interested, what I was going to do is I was going to ask, is anybody interested in reserving a spot for a tiny home? I'm going to price it the same rate I charge George and Brett, which is $500 a month. And you get a 5,000 square foot lot, which you can do a lot with. It's not just big enough for a tiny house, it's big enough for a tiny house and a shed, a small workshop, a garden, a wallopini, if anybody knows what a wallopini is. Anybody know what that is? A wallopini is a greenhouse that's sunken down about 5 feet into the ground. And I'm a 2-day expert at wallopinis because I've got one of my clients in British Columbia on a site that I leased to him. He's building a wallopini. So I only found out about it 2 or 3 days ago. So what you do is you put a greenhouse, you sink it about 6 feet into the ground because the ground is much warmer in winter than the air. So you've got about 40 or 50 degree Fahrenheit ground, which keeps your greenhouse warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. So it's called a wallopini in case anybody's interested. So if anybody was interested, you could reserve just an expression of interest, a tiny home site for $500 a month. You can get a contractor yard, a big one, which is about half an acre for $2,500 a month, and a contractor yard of the same size for $500 a month, something like that. So that's what I was thinking of, trying to gather if anybody's interested. And then the other thing is, and this is where I wanted you 4 guys and George and Brett. I'm going to share this recording with George and Brett when they get back from their holiday. What I was also thinking is that whether you're a contractor or you're an investor or you're whatever, you might also want to own part of the site. So I'm thinking about selling 2% ownership stake, probably 30 of them. So I think I'll sell 60% of the project, 2% each times 30 for $25,000. All right. And that's equivalent to getting, you can see it down here, about half an acre of land for $25,000 plus whatever debt we take on. So that's a pretty good price, I think. So it's a way for somebody who has a tiny house or a contractor yard to sort of not only rent them, but to, basically you're paying rent to yourself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of what I was thinking. So I was thinking that 2% ownership on a fully diluted basis for 25,000, and I'll sell 30 of them and raise some money. And the money will be used to develop the site along the lines that I've been talking about. So that's probably enough for me. Any questions, or was it 100% clear? Don't be shy, guys.
Where's the
Oh,
closest quarry, Bruce, for
What's
bringing
that?
in stone and aggregate?
Can you say that again?
Where's the closest quarry for bringing in stone and aggregate?
Paul, can you unmute yourself? Because you would know that.
Probably down 416. There's Kavanaugh, Tomlinson, and Jenkinson Road.
Jenkinson. So it's about maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's it's down Highway 7 there.
One of our biggest costs is just bringing in stone and materials for the yard. So
Yeah, we kind of priced out, I think 3 acres, we're looking at about 15,000 tons, but that's putting 2 feet down. There's various options of maybe getting some clean fill, build it up, and then a little less stone instead of putting 2 feet of stone. Has to be grubbed first and cleaned up. I think that's where Stuart expertise is at.
Stuart, you want to comment?
Yeah, kind of when we submitted that price over to you there, Bruce, me and Paul had a little chat afterwards, and there is probably cheaper options of bringing that land up, but it'll take a little bit longer, obviously. There's a lot of blasting going on in Canada at the moment, so there's lots of free blast rock around, but you're still going to have to finish off with some finished aggregate. It's 10, 15 minutes away, so not too bad.
Any other questions from my tiny house guests?
May I ask if you have a rough timeline for if everything goes through, if there's enough interest and all of the pieces fall in line for moving on site? Do you have an idea of how, like a year or so? Maybe?
Well, I was hoping that Marlon Small and her family would buy into this, because Trevor Small, who passed, that was his dream. And we had some other issues that we had to get past. We had some issues with the city of Ottawa we had to get through, and we did get through them. And so it opened the possibility of doing it this year. And then Trevor passed away. So it probably, realistically, listening to what Stuart just said and Paul just said, is probably going to be next year.
And if the spots would be reserved solely for tiny houses on wheels, or any portable structures may be allowed?
Well, can you explain what you mean by any portable structure?
Oh, perhaps like a yurt or something similar to an Amish shed, something like this.
So Michael, I guess this is your computer. Can you just type that question into the chat box, because there's quite a bit of background noise there, mostly wind, I think.
Is that a little bit better?
Oh yeah, perfect.
I suppose I'm thinking more of a yurt or an Amish shed type structure, something that can be moved in the future, but not necessarily towed.
Yeah, I have a project I'm doing on the Skeety Island. It's a Gulf island off the coast of Nanaimo, between Vancouver Island and the mainland. And I have on that site, I have 5 bunkies from Bunkie Life. Do you know Bunkie Life?
No.
I have 5 bunkies from Bunkie Life and a house, modular home. So bunkies would be fine, yurts would be fine. Basically that 5,000 square foot place would be yours to develop. The nice thing about Skeety is it's run by the Island Trust, and there are no building permits required. And I also own a site here in Ontario on Constant Lake, And we built a low deck below 24 inches, and we have yurts on them. And again, no building permits required for that either. So as long as, you know, the bunkies don't require building permits because their footprint is so small and they're really nice. And yurts, as you know, one of my former students, Anissa Zato, builds them in Pickering, Ontario, and we've been buying yurts from her. So we build a really nice deck. We put the yurts on them. You don't even need a building permit for it.
And
So,
then I guess,
you know, you'd have to run it by the developer, which would be me in this case, and I'm hoping James and Stuart and Paul and the other guys will help me with it as well. I need some younger people because I'm getting a bit older, and I need the energy of the young people to do stuff. But I would be keen to see, and I'll show you what bunkie life bunkies look like. Just give me a second here. Chris, what do you think of combining tiny houses and contractor yards?
I think it helps the security element, just knowing that there's a presence there all the time.
That's
So as long, I think it would be nice, like out of sight, out of mind. So in the same area, but not visually in front of the house. But I think they could go well together.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really interesting combination. And what I'm thinking is we would probably separate out the tiny homes from the contractor yards. Because, you know, if you have a pond, I mean, you guys know this because you've seen it before. If you have a pond and you put your bunkies or your yurts or your tiny homes around the pond, that's quite a nice, you know, environment. You know, one of my daughters has a tiny home, by the way, next to a pond that I dug, and I built the cabin for her. It's a 12 foot by 16 feet. It has everything in it that you'd want in a house, but it's 192 square feet. And she loves it, you know. So she, you know, do you guys know what the motto is of the tiny house movement? Less house, more life. Is that cool or what? So let me show you what we just did. So I bought, oops, wrong place. I bought 5 of these. Can you guys see the Bunkie Life site? So these are really actually really cool. So they're so small you don't need a building permit for them. And I'll show you the pictures inside. So you have a queen size bed on the ground floor. So it sleeps 2. And then you have, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe I can make it a little bigger. No, I'm sorry, I can't. So it sleeps 2 in the loft. So you can actually sleep 4 people in this thing. And it's pretty sweet. There's the loft. That would be for kids and grandchildren in my case. And then the queen size bed would be for people my age. But you know, they price their kits. They cost about $9,500 plus HST, I suppose. You can put them together in a weekend with a mallet. You don't need any great skills, right? So there you go. So that's Bunkie Life. So is that kind of the kind of thing you were thinking about?
I was mostly just thinking about options if, because I imagine it opens the doors to many people who might be interested in living tiny, not just towable structures as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I just had one question about legalities. One of the biggest problems that we find with parking is having neighbors, that kind of thing. I think this might be something that you have addressed, that you plan to address, or that is covered somehow.
Yeah, well, there's never a guarantee in the city of Ottawa. You know, you can get into trouble for just about anything. There's always nosy neighbors, but this site is quite isolated. It is heavily treed, you know, I talked to George or Brette about it. I have the right zoning on the site where they're parked, but I did not. I'll be honest with you. I did not ask for permission of the city of Ottawa if George or Brette could park there. So I wrote a parking lease, and there is always risk that somebody could complain. Having said that, I plan to you know, defend the right of, in this case, George or Brette to live next to the Barndominium, and I would certainly do that. I've tangled with the city of Ottawa a few times, not that often, but a few times, and I've won in all cases except one. So that is one of the risk factors here for sure, that the city could come along and try and stop us. But there is another factor that at play here, which you guys don't know about, and that is this particular site was subject to litigation. And in that litigation, the city of Ottawa was forced to concede that there had been some issues that affected the property that they had caused. And it is subject to a non-disclosure agreement. I didn't sign it, but Trevor Small did. And so it is a concern. But that also gives us a legal defense against any interference by the city of Ottawa on this particular site. And I would go into more detail, but I would do that privately with you if you ask me, Kayla. All right, but it just, I don't want to breach the NDA. It's not really me who would be breaching it because I didn't sign it, but I did represent Trevor. So I think you could say that I'm bound by it as well. But I'd be happy to share it with you, you know, on a different call. But I think we have a defensible project here. That's my guess anyway, and my take on it. James, do you have any comments on it?
No, I'm pretty good right now.
Yeah, you're going to live here?
Probably not.
No, James is in Cornwall, just so you guys know, and he's a young guy, but he's a big shooter in real estate. He's got, how many doors have you got now, James?
21.
21 doors, so he's a big shooter in real estate. Matt, any comments? Michelle? Matt, we can't hear you. Well, Matt is working on that. Chris Long, do you want to comment on the on you know, site plan requirements and other kinds of City of Ottawa requirements?
For a Longyards?
Well, for anything.
Geez, there's a lot of ground to cover there. We're going through a lot with that parcel. So one thing I was thinking, not to shift the question, but what about doing Airbnb glamping?
What I would do is if these young people have their tiny houses there and their yurts there, then I think they would do that, because that's a fantastic revenue stream for them. Does anybody on the call know Whispering Springs? Anybody know Whispering Springs? I'll show you Whispering Springs in a second. Chris, did you want to comment though about, just generally speaking, about you know, the City of Ottawa and its site plan requirements?
I mean, I'm doing fencing, so site plan requirements are pretty easy for contractor yards. So I'm not too, you know, with the mobile homes and everything else, you know, when it becomes a permanent structure, I think there's more around that have to be involved. But in terms of my end, it's pretty light.
Yeah, I would think so. So I want to show you guys what Whispering Springs is doing. Just give me a second here. I'm not sharing my screen. So I like that comment, Chris. Yeah, okay, I got it. I got the question, Matt. So let me show you what Whispering Springs is doing. So Whispering Springs is run by a friend and client of mine. His name's Chris Corcoran. And I think it was last year they introduced glamping tree houses. Can you see it on the screen okay, you guys? In terms of revenue generation, Chris, what do you think he gets a night for these glamping tents?
$450.
That's exactly right. Between $450 and $550 a night. So if you move your tiny house there and you have, you know, some glamping facilities there, that can really generate a lot of revenue. I mean, it's a fabulous side hustle if you like that kind of thing. Anyway, that's what he's done, and it's been a tremendous success. All right, so Matt asked a really good question. He had to put it in the chat box. But before I forget, if you're interested, I put a link in the chat box. If you guys can copy it out of the chat box, it is a copy of the reservation form, all right? Just if you're interested in learning more about it, just fill it in and send it to me. You don't, there's no money involved. Just if there's any indication that you're interested, you can download that thing and just like send it to me and say, yeah, I might be interested. Either in being a tenant here, or a tenant and an owner, or an owner and not a tenant, right, James? So So Matt asked, what is the revenue projection for the 2% ownership? So if you paid 25 grand for a 2% ownership, what kind of revenues would you generate from that? The answer is, I don't know yet. I do know that from 3 acres, after Stuart and I and Paul were on site, that 3 acres will generate about $9,000 a month of gross income. So that's 9 times 12. Gosh, I should know that. It's about $100,000 a year, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, plus or minus 100 grand a year. And the net operating income from that is probably about a third off. So it's probably about 66,000. That's from 3 acres. You got 28 acres. So if you ever actually did develop the entire 28 acres, you know, that would be, you know, probably $700,000 a year, and probably net operating income would be, after you pay off your mortgages, would probably be about 550, something like that. So, you know, $550,000 in net operating income. This is after you pay off your mortgages, mind you. At 2% of that might be $11,000 a year, something like that. But that's a few years down the road. I mean, it does take time. But I've coached clients in California, in Arizona, in Florida, in Ontario, in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, and all of them who are running this kind of thing without the tiny house town. That's a new element. But all of them who are running contractor yards are making serious money. One of Chris's competitors is also a client of mine. He has a 13-acre site, so about half the size of Marlin's site. And Matt, he called me up late last year to tell me he was making $25,000. You know the story. He's making $25,000 a month after paying his mortgage. He hadn't paid off his mortgage, after paying off his mortgage and all of his expenses. And I asked Peter, I said, Peter, how many hours a week are you working? And he said, about 5 hours a week. So I don't know any other business that you can work for. I mean, he worked a lot more than that as he's building it, but now that it's a mature business, he works about 5 hours a week. He makes $25,000 a month. And then after he pays off his mortgage, which is about another 7 years from now, it'll jump to $35,000 a month. So, and still be about 5 or 6 hours a week of work. So it's a pretty good business, but you really investing, you know, in this, you know, in your case, you and Michelle, because you want to have a window on this. Because one of the things that I think you would do, Matt and Michelle, is you might co-invest on this, see how it works, and then do one on your own. You have the capacity to do it on your own, and you're young enough too. Yes, Jake, did you have a question?
I do. I was actually just telling my daughter to be quiet, but I do have a question. What kind of any zoning changes required for this at all?
So same answer I gave Kayla before. I can talk to all of you guys offline. I'll do it on, this is being recorded, so I can't do it here. But the fact is, the city of Ottawa is subject to an NDA on this property because of some issues that they caused. And at some point there might be a rezoning, but I don't think so. And on a rural zone, I believe that this both contractor yards, because you can't do anything else with this property for a whole lot of reasons. And again, because I'm recording, I got to be careful what I say, but you cannot do anything else but contractor yards and parking tiny houses and maybe a few bunkies and yurts, as long as they can be removed at the end. I think that these temporary use structures will be fine. And I certainly believe that. So I'll have to leave that to a phone call if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. I was just curious. What's
No,
do you find for the contractor yards, the zoning, are you doing it on the rural zoning? Like, is it usually,
No,
or are you rezoning for those?
So Chris's site on Bank Street, which is also in Ottawa, is 9.6 acres, I think, plus or minus, and it is zoned industrial. So the lands to the east and to the west are both zoned industrial. So the land's all around it. So it makes sense for this to be industrial. But because of the situation with the city of Ottawa, we're at a stalemate. And so that it has opened the door to do something like this. But a rezoning at some point might make sense. But I'm not sure about that because of the situation with the city is in a box, basically. They can't do a thing. But these are good questions. All right. Anything else? Because I did promise to get you guys out if you're in under an hour, because it is a holiday in Canada, at least in Ontario. So James, on Wednesday, Marlon is going to visit with, Marlon Small's going to visit with me, and she's going to bring the listing authority. And so we are going to list it, and hopefully we'll put a group together to purchase it. But if not, we'll just simply sell it. So if you don't mind, if you're interested, if you want to participate in some way, and you always look at your risks on the downside. So in my opinion, and I said this to the small family, because I asked them not to sell it. In my opinion, if they hold on to it for a couple more years, I think it will trade for similar values to some of the other rural property in the area, which is about 50,000 an acre. So if we were to buy it for 600,000 or $635,000, and we didn't like doing it, or for some reason we stopped doing it, I think we could probably sell it within 2 or 3 years for $1.5 million. So you make some money. The thing is, for the young people on the call, you cannot save your way to wealth. You cannot. I have 5 kids, and I've told them all that. They're all tired of hearing me say it. You cannot save your way to wealth. You have to invest your way there. And there's probably no better way to do it, at least in my experience, than real estate. All right. Any other questions before we break for the day? Yes, Jake.
Just one thing. Do you mind? You're probably gonna do it anyways. Do you mind just sending that out? I just wanted to get Paula to watch it too.
Yeah,
The recording?
I will. Yeah, everybody on the call. Listen, guys, I will put this on YouTube unlisted, and everybody will get a copy of it, including George and Brett. But don't share it. Okay, definitely don't make it public. Okay, everybody.
Yeah,
All
sounds
right,
good.
listen, I really appreciate you taking your time today, Stuart. It's good to see you again, Paul. Thanks very much, Chris. Keep going, brother.
Appreciate it, Bruce. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.